Every year, my family takes a trip up to northern Wisconsin and we go canoeing. It's beautiful there. There's trees and the forest. It's just completely beautiful and it smells great. It smells like nature. I just love the experience. So I have two kids. I have a son who is age 9 and a daughter who is 6. And up until now, I never took them on this trip with us because they were too little. They were just too little to take with us. But this year, finally, we decided to take our son and our daughter with us, and we put on their backpacks and we put their school backpacks on, and we loaded them up with all the things that they would need. So my children went, their dad went, and a friend went, and we loaded everything up in my kids' backpacks, like food and clothes that they would need. And we headed on our way, and we parked, and then we had to walk a mile, and then we got into another car, which then took us upstream. So then we had to do this thing called a portage, which is where you take the boat and you carry it to where you need to dock. And the portage was short. You can't really do a long portage, especially with kids. So the portage was pretty short. So anyway, so we were walking, and I told my kids, I said, you know how to be safe. Um, just be safe, and you can run along ahead. And I stayed behind, carrying the boat and my backpack, lagging behind a little bit. How many miles was it? It was, oh, I'm not sure. I'm not good at math. Help me. 1 times 10. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's not important. So I would drag the boat up, stop, go back in my backpack, drag my backpack up, and I would just go back and forth between walking with these two things uphill. So I was strict with my kids and I said, you need to wear your life jackets. My son put his on like an expert, and he put on his life jacket, and I hope my daughter strapped her into her life jacket. So we got into the canoe and I sat in the back and my daughter sat in the middle and my son sat in the front. So my son and my daughter wanted to switch places. So my son sat in the middle and my daughter sat in the front, and that didn't balance it out because there was much more weight in the back because I was sitting in the back and my daughter was sitting in the front, so the boat was tipping back. So I put my backpack in the front to even it out. And that day the wind was blowing really hard. So the wind was blowing really hard, and the water was there were just a lot of rapids in the water, and the wind was blowing us to the sides. But my daughter, who was sitting in the front, she was so happy. She said, "Oh, I love this. This is so much fun. This is great. I love it so much." She had never been on a trip like this before. So, but my son was complaining. He said, "I'm tired. I don't want to do any work. I don't want to. I'm tired." I said, "No, you have to." So the wind was blowing so hard that if we would try to paddle our boat straight, but it would end up leaning to the right, and then it would go to the right, and then we would have to zigzag back and go to the left, and we eventually got there just by zigzagging back and forth, right and left, because the wind was blowing so hard that that's all we could do. So the boat, because the water was so rough, the boat was beginning to lean back, since I was sitting in the back, and I told my son, I said, "You have to sit closer to the front to even out the boat, or else it's going to flip." And my son said, "No, no, the boat's big enough, it won't flip." So my son wouldn't listen to me, he wouldn't move, and he wouldn't pay attention to me, so I tapped him with my paddle and I said, "You need to paddle, you need to paddle," and he didn't want to paddle, and he was making me so incredibly frustrated. So I said, you're lazy, you need to start paddling, you need to start doing work, you're not doing any work, you need to help us, you're so lazy, you just need to help us paddle, and you need to do something." So finally he moved up more towards the front to even out the weight of the boat, and he started to paddle, and it might have been about 3 hours, and we paddled and paddled, and the wind was still blowing so hard that we had to zigzag our way downstream still. And the wind was blowing hard, so I would just have to paddle really, really hard in one place to get us to go the right way. So it was such a struggle that day, and my knees hurt from kneeling on the boat because I had to kneel, and my knees hurt, and it was just really hard to paddle because the wind was blowing. So instead of going straight down the middle of the water, we had to go over closer to the bank and just travel alongside of the bank and go that way because the wind was blowing too hard and we couldn't keep a straight path if we went in the middle. So we had to go over to the side of the bank and travel that way. So we finally arrived at the end, and I was relaxed now that we were at the end. I was happy that we were finally there, and as was my son. And we arrived there, and I turned to my son and I said, "I'm sorry. I was just so frustrated. I'm sorry that I yelled and screamed at you. I shouldn't have done that. I should not have done that." And he said, "It's okay, Mom. It's okay. It's fine." And I had just been so frustrated and pissed off. And yeah, that was my canoe trip.